Now, if you manage to get the barrel over to a man's head, phenomenal, little painter.
Look, man, we can come to some sort of agreement when you want. Paint for me.
With Western games on Roblox being few and scarce and most of them being a cheap copy, you have three, in my opinion, really good Western games being a cowboy game, Westbound, and the Wild West. With a cowboy game being locked behind a paywall, I can't really tell you guys if it's a good game or not, but by looking at other people's footage of the game, it looks like this game is pretty fun. While Westbound on the other hand feels like the Wild West if it was made in the early 2000s, but even with the questionable graphics, the game seems fun with my 1 hour of playing the game. It's also important to note that Westbound has game passes that seem to give added advantage to players. I am not saying it's pay to win, but it looks like that from my perspective. Then you have the Wild West, and in this video I'll be showing you why this game is so awesome. So come along with me, it's time to show you the game. When you first boot up the Wild West and spawn, you're immediately taken back by the huge map of this Western Roblox game. Everywhere you go, there's always something different and memorable, with locations like Howling Peak, a dark castle up in the mountains where you can bid on rare weapons. Even towns that you might think that look the same like Bronze City and Puerto Dorado has their own special vibe to it. Bronze City feels more sluggish and more run down, like it was built for people under poverty, while Puerto Dorado's air is legit cleaner and there's less dust in the air. With all these locations, you never feel like you're stuck into a box with just the color brown, but instead your eyes are wowed by all these pretty locations. If you just go to reservation camp and walk around, you'll get what I mean. The game just feels so immersive with its graphics. Even with the time this game was made in, it still outclasses and somehow looks better than most modern day Roblox games. You also have subtle things like the grass moving whenever you run past it and the windmills actually moving 24/7. This might cause some lag, so you have opportunities to turn it off if you have doo-doo computer. And in the future updates, they're gonna add NPCs to put life into areas that seem dead. Remember this quote, future updates, it's gonna be important for later. But okay, graphics can only look so good, but you will need something to complement that, and that would be the soundtrack is so good in this game. I can't emphasize this enough, but this is the type of music you would see in a Star Wars movie or something. They went out of their way just to make a whole playlist of songs. They even decided to make 3 more songs just for their Christmas and Halloween updates. 1 for Halloween and 2 for Christmas. They could have so easily just slapped any Western soundtrack or had no soundtrack at all, but no, they didn't. As a result, with every fight, every moment you are alive, you feel so hyped being in that specific location you are in. It doesn't matter if you're in Fort Henry, Puerto Dorado, or Buffalo Ridge. I feel like the soundtrack perfectly mimics the Minecraft soundtrack, where you can insert the Minecraft soundtrack anywhere and it would fit in perfectly. Talking regarding sounds, the sound design in this game feels so nice, especially the gun sounds and the water sounds. It really adds to the immersion that you're indeed in the Wild West. That's all I gotta say. Just move on to the next segment. I'm too lazy. I don't know how I'm gonna move on to the next segment. With the soundtrack and the atmosphere being so perfect, this game wouldn't even need to have PvP mechanics and could just brand itself as a showcase game. But the devs didn't really do that, and they managed to create a really good PvP system. When I say good, I really mean it. People have made montages from this game's PvP mechanics, and some players in the Wild West would play the Wild West only because of the PvP mechanics, because it is just that good. And yes, you can go into first person, but it isn't really recommended because it's kinda ass, as you can't see the crosshair and some guns' iron sights are just terrible. While still on the topic of PvP, the Wild West gives you over 30 plus weapons you can use with 90 unique loadouts. Every gun in this game has its own quirk to it. For example, the Peacekeeper, Model 3, and the Lamette revolver. They all look like the same guns, but just different colors, but the stats would say otherwise. The Peacekeeper is basically that middle ground between these two revolvers. It's reliable and doesn't really excel in specific situations. Meanwhile, the Model 3 is made for long range, but the damage is pitiful. Then you have the Lamette, which is the complete opposite of the Model 3, and it trades damage over accuracy. This game also has bows as well, which trades your primary for a wooden stick with a string attached to it. I can't say this is a good weapon considering the fact that you stand still while shooting it, but nevertheless, it's there. And the accuracy is really good on horseback. So if you ever get tired of using weapons with gunpowder, then you can shoot wooden sticks at people. With all these weapons and their stats to them, you'll probably think that this game is pretty balanced. Well, I haven't even mentioned this. From the start, it looks like this game's progression isn't really that bad, as the most expensive gun in a gun shop is 14,000, and the most expensive horse is 10,000. All this is very reasonable considering you'll get around 2k every 5 minutes while grinding in this game. But all that changes when you go over to Howling Peak and go inside the dreaded auction house. A little bit of context. The auction house update was added 3 years ago, and what the auction house is you're able to bid on weapons that are questionably balanced, and these weapons would take over 50 plus hours of grinding. Some of them would even take more, like the Spitfire and the Patterson. These weapons are terribly balanced, and the Wild West saw these said weapons and nerfed them, some of them. Like for example the Spitfire, which on release was just a developer weapon. It was the equivalent of having an M4A1 against someone with a BB gun. The original Spitfire would kill anything if you would just point it in a general direction. And nowadays it's still OP but in longer ranges. Keep in mind, the Spitfire would take over a week, or in my case, a month of grinding just for the weapon. My proposal to balance the auction house would be to add more gimmick weapons. You might ask, what are these gimmick weapons? Well, these weapons would be weapons like the axe gun, where you have a lengthy reload and it would have one bullet in the chamber, but if you hit your shots, especially a headshot, you will be rewarded with an insta-kill. On paper this seems really overpowered, but in practice it's really hard to land your shots as you need to be in close range to land them, and the gun isn't fully accurate, and the fall off is really bad. The reason why gimmick weapons is good for the auction house is so these really expensive weapons wouldn't outshine the cheaper options, but they would still be desirable as they would have their own special element to them. With the up and coming progression update, Starboard Studios might be able to fix their current issues on progression, but there's another thing that Starboard Studios is bad at, and that is over the years, the Wild West brought many updates like the Forts update and the Auction House update, and these updates would satiate the community, but with the promise of the building update and now the progression update, the community would grow restless with constant delays as the building update was teased all the way back in 2020. It was supposed to be released on 2021, then 2022, but then it was set back to unknown as the devs have way too many things to work on. One thing I noticed with Starboard Studios is that they're really bad at telling people release dates, and with a community mostly filled with kids who barely hit puberty, you'll get anger. This anger would build up so much to the point where the devs would get swatted and doxxed multiple times, to my understanding. As a result, they would end up staying quiet till 2024, while the devs started talking in their server once again, teasing that the progression update would come out mid-November in 2024. I don't know if you noticed, but it's 2025, and with Wild West you should really never rely on release dates and take them with a grain of salt. In conclusion, you should still try out the Wild West even with its progression being questionable and their release dates being really bad. But under that mod, you can find something that's really enjoyable. Who knows, this might be the game where you would spend... Let me check. Oh, at 32 hours. I'm 32 hours of shit. Oh my god. And that's it. I'm finally done with this video. Big thanks to Tempest for making the thumbnail for me. Without him, this video would not have been possible. This video has taken over 1 week in the making. I've been planning to make this video for a while now, but never had the motivation to do it. I'll probably make another type of video like this in the foreseeable future, but until now, go play the Wild West and mine at 1 ore for 10 hours straight.